Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Happy holidays. I hope you enjoyed the holidays with family and friends. We are back here at FTN for college basketball madness. That's right. We are bringing you college basketball picks, analyzing the games 3 times a week. I'm your host, Mike Randle. Folks, FTN, we have it rolling here for college basketball. You have Frank Brank, who gets up in our Discord early in the morning and gives you plays on sides and totals. You have Mike Kuchar, who's killing it with props. You have Walt Waddell for daily fantasy. Just so many great things here that we give you at FTN. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. We're going to get back into the games here as we get ready to go into 2023 and continue to kill it. We are having a great year so far. You can follow us in our bet tracker. I'm up over 21 units here on sides. So we have a ton of sides, some totals as well, and some interesting information to get to you today, folks. Let's get right into it here on a Wednesday with a nice slate of games. Not an overwhelming amount, but a nice slate here on Wednesday. First game, folks, we're going to go to. We're ready to rock and roll. First one we will start is Ole Miss and Tennessee under 130.5, and we're taking Ole Miss. Now, if you look at this number has dropped. It has gone down to 7.5. We got it last night and we set up, and we're glad that we did, but I am still going with it. Majority of the bets are going to be on Tennessee here. They've been rolling, but the money is coming in on Ole Miss. Why? Several reasons. First off, this is the SEC opener for Tennessee, and it's on the road. That's never easy. Ole Miss is coming off a brutal home loss where they simply could not score, but we have Kermit Davis, folks, and he always plays close games against the Volunteers at Ole Miss. They lost 66-60 at Tennessee last year in overtime. They were beat by Tennessee the year before 52-50 at home. Now, they were blown out in 2020, but the year before that, they lost by just 2, 73-71. So 3 of the 4 times when Kermit Davis has been in Ole Miss, they have played this game close. Ole Miss will throw that 1-3-1 defense at Tennessee, which means the Volunteers are going to have to hit shots, and they're going to have to hit shots from the corner, top of the key, different spots. That is not their strength. They struggle. They look very impressive this year, but they've only played one true road game, and that was a loss at Arizona. Is Arizona better than Ole Miss? Of course it is, but I think Ole Miss keeps it close. Both teams will hit the offensive boards, and the key for me is that Ole Miss has Deshaun Ruffin, their star sophomore guard, back. He had a season-ending knee injury last year. He was out for the start of the season, but he's returned for 5 games. He's played 26 minutes in each of the last 2. They have eased him back in, but he looks like he's ready for a full workload. He's gone 4 of 8 from deep in those 2 games, and he's averaging 15 points per game. I believe in Kermit Davis. As you know, they had an awful performance. I think they bounced back. Tennessee, as much as they've been fantastic and one of the most impressive teams in college basketball this year, only 7-5 against the spread. Ole Miss under Kermit Davis, 7-4-1 as a home underdog, 5-3 as a home underdog since 2020. I am taking the points with Kermit Davis here, and I think it's going to go under. We're going to stay under this number. It has risen. It opened at 128.5. It's at 130.5. We are taking them and going under here with this total and taking Kermit Davis and the points, marrying the under with the underdog, which I always like to do. Next game up, UNC Wilmington versus Monmouth. There are very few teams, folks, that have been worse than Monmouth this year. Monmouth moved up in their conference competition. They're in the CAA this year. They left the MAC. The result, they are 1-12 overall before even starting conference competition, and now they're playing a solid UNC Wilmington team, that tied for the CAA championship last year at 15-3. UNC Wilmington 8-3 against the spread. Monmouth 4-9 against the spread. UNC Wilmington solid last year and a very solid strength of schedule, 40th overall. UNC Wilmington beat Vermont on a neutral court. They beat North Texas on a neutral court. They played UNC away. They played UConn away. They played Oklahoma. They are battle tested. Monmouth's metrics are absolutely awful. They can't make threes. They can't make twos. They can't defend anything. They turn the ball over. I am laying the number here. I don't like laying a big number, especially in a conference game, but I have to do it here because Monmouth has just not been good. They have not been good the entire year. So UNC Wilmington, I think it is up to 12, 12.5. I'm still fine with it. We are going to lay the points. Maybe King Rice can get Monmouth going here. I don't see it. And when I don't believe a team can win, it is very difficult for me to take the points because I want to take the team that I think is going to win outright. Next game, game number 3, TCU and Central Arkansas. I have been impressed with TCU. TCU has lost one game all year, and the only game they lost, they're 10-1 overall, was to Northwestern State when they did not have star guard Mike Miles. Miles is back after a series of injuries. He's played very well. Emmanuel Miller had a back injury. He recovered. Damian Baugh, another starter, sat out the first 6 games with a suspension because he signed with an NBA agent. Jamie Dixon, excellent coach. His team is playing very, very well. They are only 6-5 against the spread, which is why people are a little hesitant, I think, to lay this large number. But they've covered 5 of the last 6, and they're playing a Central Arkansas team that is playing their 4th straight road game tonight. They've lost their last 3 road games, all against inferior opponents at TCU by an average of 21 points. I like Power 6 teams that have a quality big man, and that's what TCU has with big man Eddie Lampkin inside. When you go to the NCAA tournament, I don't like to pick upsets when you have a small school going into a larger school if that larger school has a quality big man. You saw it for years. North Carolina was not a team under Dean Smith, under Roy Williams, that got upset in the early rounds of the tournament. Why? They usually had a quality big inside. Whether we go back to Sean May, Tyler Hansborough, when you have that quality big, it is a huge obstacle for a team to overcome when they're trying to get an upset. I don't think that happens here. I think TCU wins comfortably. Eddie Lampkin was 11 boards against Utah in a big win, 12 boards against Providence. So he's been dominant against much tougher competition here. Central Arkansas is guard heavy. They're going to struggle inside. Both teams open their conference on Saturday. So people want to argue a sleepy spot for TCU. I don't see it. TCU, now healthy, have not been playing with their full complement of teams of weapons on their team coming into this. I like TCU here. I don't think they fall asleep. I think they get the job done. Next game. I love Virginia, and you guys know I am a huge Virginia fan. But what you've seen is the teams that have had success against Virginia are teams that also want to play slow, that are comfortable playing at this pace. Virginia loves to feast off those turnovers and making teams play a way that they don't want to be comfortable, that they don't want to play. In this case, they're now playing an Albany team that likes to slow it down. Dwayne Killings is there. This team has played competition against some tough teams. They've gone on the road at UMass. They've gone on the road at Providence. They went up and played Siena. They're a gritty, tough team from Albany, New York, and I think this number is just too high. Of course, Virginia's going to win. They're coming off a home loss to Houston. They're coming off an away loss to Miami, but I don't think it means they're going to win by 30 points. I see this as a comfortable, maybe 18 to 20-point win, and you have Albany, who's not going to look to push the pace against Virginia. You saw what happened with Houston, who slowed them down. You saw what happened with Miami. When teams slow down Virginia, they usually don't cover. And I think this number is just a little bit too high. So we're going with Albany plus 28.5. It's even started to tick down a little bit now to 28. I would take it there. Virginia covers when they play teams like a North Carolina. I can't wait for UVA to play North Carolina because I'm going to grab those points. But when they play a team that slows them down, it usually means slower pace, points at a premium. I think this number is too high. I'm going to take it here with Albany getting 28.5. Next game up, one of the biggest games of the day. We are going with UConn laying 12.5 against Villanova. Now, UConn burned us a little bit in their last game. Connecticut 13-0 this year. They've been incredibly impressive. They did come out against Georgetown and struggle, but I think this is their bounce back spot. They beat Butler away, destroyed Butler away by 22 points. Then they played Georgetown and they struggled. Georgetown hit some shots. You have a Villanova team coming in here that is still a little bit compromised, that is still playing without their full complement of weapons. And yes, I am firmly aware that there has been some impressive performances by the super freshman Cam Whitmore for Villanova, but he hasn't really shown the ability to score at such a high rate. This Villanova team still is not a deep team. This is a UConn team that is tremendous on the boards, that already had sort of a misstep there against Georgetown. They're going to come out. They're going to be ready to go. They're great from three. They're great on the interior. They defend whole teams to 27% from three-point range. I am going to lay this number, even though Connecticut did not cover against Georgetown. They only won by 11. Villanova has been playing better. They've won 5 in a row. They just beat St. John's at home. That was very impressive. Connecticut is light years better than St. John's. I am taking UConn laying the points here against Villanova, even though it's 12.5. And I firmly expect in this situation, I expect the money and the bets to be on Villanova. We are going in the other direction. Make sure to get those questions in. If you have some questions here, folks, we'll continue to go through these games. Only a couple more left here because it's not a full slate. It's only a slight slate, but we have some good ones. You're not going to be surprised at this one at all. You know my thoughts on UCF, and I also really like the way that this Wichita State team has been playing. So even though UCF is a team that has a good record, they beat us badly against Ole Miss. We are going to continue to go back. UCF Johnny Dawkins lost to Missouri. They played Stetson at home. They only won by 15. Now they're playing a Wichita State team in the AAC that is going to battle them. I still don't like the offense that I see from UCF. They're still shooting just 47% from inside the arc. They still turn the ball over way too much, and you're playing a Wichita State team under Isaac Brown that will not turn the ball over, that will defend you on inside the arc, only 41%. That's top 10 in the country. That will defend you from three-point range, 27%. This is going to be a slow, grinded out battle. I have no problem with the under as well, but I like this team in the first AAC game for Wichita State. I like them to keep this game close. I don't trust Johnny Dawkins. I understand he's had some nice games there, but overall they have not been great against the spread, and I'm going to fade them again with the Shockers, with a great defense, especially on the interior, that wants to muck it up against a UCF team that can definitely struggle to score. No home court advantage in Orlando. I talked about that. This line has dropped now to 7, maybe 6.5 where you're seeing it. I am fine with it. I love Wichita State tonight getting 7.5 against UCF. Another huge game for tonight that we're going with. Talk about it right now. Auburn and Florida, folks. Auburn and Florida. You know, Florida has been a real disappointment. Put a poll out on Twitter the other day. Some people view that Florida has been maybe the most disappointing team that they have seen out there, and I understand why. They should be better. Todd Golden, these are not his players. Todd Golden is a superior coach. He's a great X's and O coach. He's going to build a winner at Virginia, but he doesn't have his players. This is still Mike White's group, and he's struggling to find their role. Colin Castleton had a good game last time against Oklahoma. That still was a loss on a neutral court, but it was his best game of the year. He has struggled to score consistently. Now they're opening their SEC game at Auburn here against an Auburn team that comes in with elite defensive metrics. Only 27% allowed from three, only 43% allowed from 2-point range. They're going to be relentless on the boards. I think they're going to push Castleton completely out of the way, and they're going to get out and they're going to run away and hide. This is only 5.5. I don't know why it's so low. Florida has shown me nothing here. They have played one road game, and that was against rival Florida State. And if you remember correctly, Florida State is struggling this year. No Baba Miller yet. He's still not cleared, but they were down big early on. So it is the second road game, true road game of the year for Florida, and I'm only laying 5.5 against an Auburn team that always plays well at home, that always gets up for this rivalry. We are laying the points here with Auburn minus 5.5 against Florida. Moving on, next game. This one is dependent on Darius Quisenberry. If the star guard Darius Quisenberry plays, and as per reports on social media, he is playing, I am absolutely going with Fordham getting 1 point now. It's flipped. People are backing Davidson, getting 1 point here on the road in a road spot. And, you know, Fordham at home has been very, very tough and very impressive. But I am taking Fordham, gladly getting the point here against Davidson. Fordham is 12-1 overall, and they are undefeated at home. Remember, we were impressed. Fordham went away against a good Tulane team and hung 95 points. Quisenberry was great. He has been out the last couple games. They struggled against VMI. I put in the bet tracker that we were taking VMI in that game because without Quisenberry, this team is totally different. In this situation, Matt McKillop, Davidson team has not been as great as Davidson has been in the past. Matt takes over for his legendary father, who coached at Davidson for years. What has Davidson done in the last few games? They lost at Charlotte at home. They lost to Delaware. They beat Western Carolina at home, but did not cover, only won by 8. They lost at Purdue. They were tough, and they lost at home to Northeastern as well. A bad, bad loss. Davidson is not playing the way they normally do. They are not making their threes. And assuming that Quisenberry comes back, Keith Ergo has done a phenomenal job here at Fordham. Fordham Rams 12-0. Ignore the last game against VMI because Quisenberry should be back. And if he is, I expect late money and steam to come in here. And I am going with Fordham. And I am getting a point, which I'm happy to take here in this next matchup. Maine and Harvard. Folks, you know my love of Maine. And boy, do I love Maine. And we're going to go back to them here against Harvard at home. Maine has been one of the best teams against the spread this year. They are coming off a rough loss away at Ohio State and then an equally rough loss against Akron, which is why this number is actually getting bumped up. I think you can see it at 6.5. But Maine at home this year has played very well. They beat Columbia by 23. They went on the road to Brown and they covered. They played Fordham away and they covered. Maine can shoot it. Chris Markwood, former Maine Black Bear, has come back and has this team shooting threes and playing very well. I know Harvard is disciplined, but they can't score from the outside. They've struggled to make free throws. They're only shooting 66%, and they turn the ball over a ton for Tommy Amaker's squad. They are coming now. They are going away to Princeton on Saturday. They are opening up their Ivy League competition against their rival Princeton. And now coming from Kansas, Fog Allen, where they played competitively, they're now going away to Maine. This is the definition of a sleepy spot against a Maine Black Bear team that I really love, that has been absolutely fantastic here against the spread this season. They have not played well lately, but do not sleep on Maine. I like this team a lot. It's up to 6.5. If it continues to rise, I'll be very happy. Give me the Black Bears plus 5.5 or 6.5, wherever you get it here against Harvard. Let's check out some questions here. Let's see. Appreciate it, Colby, for the comment. Thoughts on Illinois, Chicago? Oh, my Flames against Illinois State. I will get to that at the end, Colby. I promise. I love Illinois, Chicago. You know that. We will get into that game in a little bit. No problem. Let me just get through the rest here on the schedule, and then we'll talk about it. Next up, Richmond versus Coppin State. You know, Richmond really, Tyler Burton has really come into his own for Richmond. What a tremendous player. And this Richmond squad, 6-6, but the games they've played, they beat Drake at home. They blew out Fairleigh Dickinson at home. They beat Bucknell at home by 10, and their defense has been locked down. They are limited on offense because they graduated so much from last year. It's Tyler Burton, and that's it. But they lock you down, allowing only 46% from inside the arc, 31% from three-point range, and they're shooting 36% from deep, which is going to be even better when they're at home. They're facing a Coppin State team that does not rebound the ball well, that turns it over here. 14 points, I get it's a lot, but Tyler Burton is a star. He is an NBA player on this roster for the Spiders. And what I love that Chris Mooney has done is he knows that he lost Jacob Gilliard and a lot of their players from last year, so they are emphasizing defense. And I think they cover tonight. I have no problem laying that number against a Coppin State team that will give them multiple chances. They're impatient on offense. They're dangerous. They can make some threes for sure, but I don't like them here against a disciplined Richmond spot. I think it is a bad matchup. Next up, Belmont versus Bradley. I have some rules, folks, that I follow here. Now, when Bradley is home, they are very tough out. But when Bradley's on the road, they can be very, very shaky. Bradley already 2-0. They beat Northern Iowa and Missouri State. Very good. But this is a Belmont team under Casey Alexander that is starting to get hot. They lost a rough game at home to a good Middle Tennessee State, which should not have happened. And there was a lot of comments about that, how it was a disappointing loss. But they have righted the ship. Chattanooga away. That was not an easy win. Samford at home, who's a solid Samford team. They beat them by 23 points. Momentum is coming, which is going to get to our last pick, which is very important here with Duquesne and Dayton. We'll get to that in a little bit. Belmont, 2 in the country, 41.5% from three-point range. This number has flip-flopped. You had Belmont favored. Now they have changed it. Belmont is actually getting a point. I am fine with that. I will take the 1.5 at home against Bradley. Bradley is decent from three, but they turn the ball over a ton. Belmont, Casey Alexander, they started to shoot it. They're always tough at home. Historically, they've been tough against the spread at home. I like this team. You have Bradley, who's 2-0. You have Belmont, who lost to Illinois State away, so they want to be in line here for the Missouri Valley Conference title. They can't afford a second misstep and go down to 1-2. I am taking Belmont plus 1.5 here against Bradley. And our last game that we'll talk about here, Dayton and Duquesne, folks. Dayton and Duquesne. I am going with Dayton minus 8.5. And, you know, Duquesne has been a team that I have struggled with handicapping this year, but they have some serious injuries that they have players coming back today, but they are not necessarily at full strength. You saw them against Marshall lose at home. You saw them in New Mexico State lose at home. Then they righted the ship against DePaul. They lost. They won a close game against Indiana State, but they didn't cover. And then Winthrop. But they are struggling because there are some players that are out that I think you have to be concerned with when you're going on the road in a massive matchup here against a good Dayton team. You have Rodney Gunn, who should be back today. You have injuries to Tevin Brewer, who I think is going to play. But what I read this morning is that there's going to be a minutes limit to Tevin Brewer and to RJ Gunn. I think that's a mistake. Dayton is a team that overall, if you look at the macro look at the season, has been very disappointing. People expected them to be sort of an Elite Eight or better contender. They were the preseason favorite in the A-10. And what did they do? They lost 3 games in a row to Wisconsin, NC State, and BYU. However, they have turned the corner recently. They blew out UNC Asheville by 23. They beat Wyoming by 17. They blew out Alcorn State by 42. Momentum is a huge thing. So even though this is a conference game, and even though this is a matchup here between two teams that on paper look evenly matched, I think Dayton's going to run away and hide. Duquesne has struggled. They've allowed points all over the place. I am taking Dayton. It was 7.5. It's now 8.5. I think they're going to blow this team out tonight and get to like a 15-point comfortable win. Even though Duquesne is very talented, I think they get into foul trouble. I don't think they're at full strength, and I love the way Dayton has been playing here. So initially, when you handicap this game, I was thinking Duquesne. I am laying the points with Dayton minus 8.5. Let's get to our comments here. Colby, you have been waiting very patiently. I appreciate it. You have UIC versus Illinois State. Let's take a look at that one here. That was one that I definitely noticed, but I did not pick. Illinois State has been able to score. Even though their metrics aren't great, they do push the pace. They are top 85 in the country in pace against Illinois State. I actually like what Lockledge has been doing this year. I think he realized that his defense will be there in big spots. They've been fantastic against the 3 and always have been here. And now today they're playing Illinois State, 6-7. Illinois State wants to slow it down. I like the Flames in this game here, Colby. I think Yaklich at home has been very tough. That was a tough spot against Northwestern. That was a disappointing loss. They are 0-2, though, and a team that is 0-2 in conference play, who is home as a favorite, I am going to take every single time. I think this Illinois State team is actually better than they've shown. They lost to Missouri State. They lost to Drake. Those are 2 tough games to start. Now we have Illinois State. I'm going to take the Flames in this game, Colby, and I will lay the small number here. I have no problem with it because I think the Flames will get their pace. And what you notice is if they get their pace at home, they are very tough to come back on because they will lock you down. But the Northwestern game just got away from them, and that's what happened. Hi, Roland's got a question here. He says, Richmond alum. I think they smoked them today. The boys are buzzing right now. Hi, Roland. I agree with you. They have been scoring at tremendous rate. Burton is the real deal. He's one of the most underrated players in the country, and their defense is legit. Chris Mooney is such a great coach. He knows he has to lock down. I don't think there's any way here that Coppin State comes in and gets the job done. No chance. So, folks, just recapping here. We'll go through our games really quick. Thank you for joining us as always. Dayton minus 8.5 against Duquesne. Even though Duquesne is talented, even though Keith Danbro does a good job, I love the way Dayton has been playing lately, and I think they cover the number. You're going to give me 1.5 with Belmont at home. I think you're crazy. Bradley at home versus Bradley on the road. 2 different things. Casey Alexander, squad number 2 in the country from 3-pointers. I will take that point. That could be a money line play if you want to do that. Richmond minus 14 versus Coppin State. I believe in Richmond's defense. I don't believe in Coppin State's defense. I think Richmond gets the job done and locks teams up here. Maine, you can get this at 6.5. It's a classic sleepy spot with Harvard playing Princeton on Saturday coming up in their first Ivy League matchup. I love the Black Bears shooting from deep, and I don't like what Harvard's been doing with turnovers. So I think 6.5, which is at its now, is way too much. This Fordham plus Davidson line, this is Darius Quisenberry dependent. I'm reading that he plays. I'm reading that he starts. If he does, Fordham undefeated at home, no problem against Davidson squad that is still adjusting with the new head coach. Auburn minus 5.5 against Florida. No problem there. Florida, I don't think they have the toughness. I don't think they have the chemistry here in Todd Golden's first year to go on the road and win at Auburn. So I think Auburn pounds them, even though Auburn can be a little struggle with the free throws in the offense. I think Auburn takes care of it. No problem. You know I'm fading UCF. You know my thoughts on Johnny Dawkins. You know my thoughts on Orlando not being a home court advantage. Give me the Shockers here. It's down to 6.5. I like it there. No problem. UConn minus 12.5 against Villanova. I expect the bets. I expect the money to be on Villanova here, but they still aren't at full strength. I don't know about Cam Whitmore in a spot like this. He's been rebounding well. He's been doing a lot of other things, but this is going to be a UConn team that is not going to be sleepy because they struggle against Georgetown. I think you get their A+ game tonight against the Wildcats. Albany plus 28.5, simply because a slow team against UVA. I don't see UVA winning by 30 or 35 points. I think this is a 20-point win. I think this is a few points too high. And if you look, it is actually starting here at FTN to tick down to about 27.5. TCU, it is not a sleepy spot for TCU because they've dealt with injuries the entire year. Their team is finally back together. Mike Miles is back together. And when you have Eddie Lampkin, the big man inside, I think he gets the job done against an undersized Central Arkansas team that is tough, but is not going to be able to score on the road here against TCU to keep this game close. This line is up to 12.5, UNC Wilmington versus Monmouth. I get it, but I just have to take the points, lay the points here with UNC Wilmington because Monmouth has been absolutely terrible. And our last game, folks, Ole Miss. It's now down to 7.5. I'm still going with it. Death Taxes and Kermit Davis. They usually play Tennessee tough. Tennessee can struggle to score. The 1-3-1. I know it's a little scary for everyone because Ole Miss was blown out of 21-0 against UCF, but this is our first game here in the SEC, and I expect a big, big performance from Kermit Davis and Ole Miss. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. We appreciate it. A fantastic job as always. I cannot wait to continue. We're going to turn the calendar this weekend of 2023. Stay with us at FTN. Major, major stuff coming here for college basketball. We're going to have incredible stuff in the tournament. Make sure to check out our odds page and subscribe. For FTN, I'm Mike Randle. Let's get to the window.